Boys and girls, your attention, please.
Hello and welcome back inside the Park for May for podcast number 924. It's Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
A.K.A. Negative Camera. You know why I've asked you here.
You must convince the villagers that I'm harmless.
I am harmless, darn it. Hey, tonight, for your kind consideration, we're going to cover some Formula One news. Really, there was some good articles in the press, sort of retrospective thinking about things. Why didn't Schumacher's return work? Yeah, a lot of great stuff. But as far as actual news, well, we had to come up with some actual news, and we did that. But before doing that, of course, I've got to introduce my guest tonight. You know what that means. I got to go all the way to the right coast of our nation, nestled in our nation's capital, where she plies her skills as a master statistician, weaving magic and all kinds of stuff that she does. You know her. You love her, the lovely, the redoubtable Grace. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty great, Todd. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm just getting ready for Snowmageddon here in the Midwest.
Oh, it hasn't. When are you supposed to get snow?
Like Wednesday?
Oh, yeah. We're supposed to get storm number 1 tomorrow evening, and then storm number 2 on Wednesday.
Well, I was noticing because I have this thing on my phone. It's it's an interesting thing, and it's called a weather app.
Yes.
And I happen to be noticing that here, and I'll show you, the little red pin is where I'm at. And see, all that snow just went north of I-70 right over the top of us. Yeah.
So, we are also supposed to, tomorrow. Just in time for rush hour. It's always the best time for snow, right?
Perfect.
Start around 3, it'll be fine. What possibly could go wrong?
Perfect.
Snow. We're just waiting for that. And, And you
great.
recovered from yesterday?
I did, hey, look, here's my take. Everybody knows I'm a Chiefs fan, lifelong. I'm not a fair weather fan. I'm not a bandwagoner. I've born and raised in Kansas City, lifelong fan. The reality of it is I knew the Eagles were the better team. There's no doubt about that going into this Super Bowl. And I think ultimately the Chiefs, if you look at their season, it took a lot of luck and the toast, scandal and the doink. And we kind of backed into it. It wasn't a dominant season for us. They didn't look really on song for quite a bit of the season. So for us to make it to the big dance was great. I didn't think we'd win it. I was just hoping, I didn't think it would be a blowout though. Which was pretty bad. So, but anyway, all that being said, super happy for Jalen and the Eagles. What a great group of guys. What a fantastic team. And that defensive line was just terrific. I don't think they rushed or blitzed Mahomes once. It's just those 4 guys just dominated. What a great line. What a great team. So very happy for the Eagles. Congratulations, Philadelphia. Very happy for you. And, hated that my Chiefs lost, but they didn't deserve to win. The Eagles, by far.
All right.
So, I didn't take it too hard. It's not like, it's not like Lewis losing his 8th title.
Well, that's true.
80-21,
it was not. Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, right. So there you go.
I mean, you have a chance. It's a whole new season.
Yeah. Well, hey, here's the upsides, though. I'll be honest with you. This is just my personal opinion. I don't think Patrick's really looked on form all year. No. I think, I don't know. I mean, he's had moments. Of course, he's a brilliant player, but he just he didn't show up Super Bowl. He wasn't there. And he was rushed so much, the timing of the plays didn't work. He's forcing it, and it just, and so kudos to the Eagles. But, they just look off quite a bit of this season. So anyway, yes, will you live? But we do have some great players, D-Hop and the receivers and Xavier and Rasheed and just some great wide receivers and stuff. So, but the big question is Kelsey going to retire? What do you think?
I didn't know that was a big story, but
okay.
Sure,
it's a big story in Kansas City. Yeah,
I'm sure that makes. I mean, right now the big story in Pittsburgh is, are they going to take Rodgers? Right, like that's a whole nother. So
yeah,
he's one of the team's names. So I don't know. We're focused on because we can't keep Russ. Danger Russ didn't really work out for the Steelers. So
hey, welcome to the NFL podcast, where we talk about all the NFL action that you are dying to hear, and everybody's.
It's the off season, people.
I know.
You get some fun extra stuff in the off season because I have to cram it all in between the 4 weeks when there isn't Formula One, right?
But everybody's at home going,
Get to the show!
This is the show.
Yes, I know.
It's a Super Bowl. I mean, it's a thing.
It is a thing in America.
At least we're not baseball and call it the World Series, even though it doesn't really even include Canada anymore.
Right. Well, they got Toronto.
I said barely.
Barely.
In it, right? Is it the World Series? No.
I don't know. We're gonna put a tariff on the on
That's right.
Toronto.
That's right.
To play in the MLB. So let's talk about some Formula One news. But before I do that, I have to say big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters out there, who and a few of you that signed up this week. So thank you so much to you. We've been losing some, and I totally get it. Tough economy and everything. I totally get it. Don't I get it? So anyway, a big thank you to all of you. And if you are a Patreon supporter, you can join us live during the recording of our podcast Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here in the U.S. And you can chat along with us just like Melton is. And so anyway, there you go.
I will say, Todd, that at least you didn't write one of two awkward commercials involving facial hair. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It was weird both times. And why was there two commercials?
I don't know.
So at least two people out there were like, you know what would be great? Eyebrows and mustaches. Two separate people had this idea, and it made it all the way.
This may be the lamest commercial Super Bowl I think I've ever seen.
They're really bad. I mean,
they're really bad.
I think it's lost its panache or whatever, right? What the commercials used to be, that's just not the same anymore.
They were great. They were funny. Now they're just, it's like, oh, here, these kind of things worked in the past. Let's just reheat them.
Yeah, it's a very weird place now, commercials.
It's the S-wordification of everything, including marketing. However, I will say that Pringles and who was it, Little Caesars, they did a great job because they realized they both did some facial hair thing. And so they got on the phone together and they released a joint thing with eyebrows and a mustache. And they, so everybody wins in that case. It was a brilliant marketing move to say, oh my gosh, they did eyebrows and we did a mustache.
It's like Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man, right?
Yeah.
Oh my God, you
too?
Right?
Yeah, right. So good on them.
I think that was, I don't know. I still like the Uber's Eats commercials were my favorite with the Jerry Rice eating rice. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
Because it is all about food. And so that clearly is my demographic.
Tis. Yeah. Yes, it is. So some Formula One news this week.
Nice segue right into Jerry Rice, right into Netflix. We're ready.
Right into Netflix. So if you were a heavy user of the socials this week, you probably saw the announcement that Netflix and Formula One confirmed that the 7th season of Drive Survive is going to be released on March 7th, 2025. Listen to the crowd. They're unstoppable. Oh. So yes, March 7th, 2025. Mark your calendars. Get ready. The series is going to focus on the 2024 Formula One season, covering key events such as Charles Leclerc's win in Native Monaco, Lando Norris's first world championship, and Lewis Hamilton's move to Ferrari. Right?
Did I just get trolled? What champion? Lewis, I like that. Lando Norris's first championship. He didn't get a championship. The team got a championship.
Norris's first World Drivers' Championship. Yeah, no. What did I just read that?
Yeah.
I'll just read anything on the prompter. Yes, World Constructors' Championship. Lando's first win, I think.
I think so, but I feel like I just got trolled by Todd, right? Like, what? Here's why I'm not paying attention. Did Lando Norris get the championship I wasn't aware of? I don't think that happened.
That's crazy.
I'm pretty sure I would have noticed.
That's terrible.
Ron Burgundy over there, just reading whatever.
Yeah, that's you, San Diego. Yes, I just read anything on the prompter. I'm like Ron Burgundy. Anyway, Lewis Hamilton's move for yeah. Thanks for catching me on that. That was terrible.
Well, if it literally, if it had been anybody else or any other team, it would have gone right past me. But I'm like,
Yeah.
McLaren. Wait, did I miss a season? I mean, I can't believe it's February and February's almost done. But really, I think I would have remembered that.
Yeah, it's crazy. Constructors Championship, yes.
Yeah.
Let's see. Additionally, the series will address the interpersonal chaos at Red Bull and Max Verstappen's fourth World Championship. The, you know what else it's going to cover?
Controversy.
The controversies surrounding Red Bull team chief Christian Horner will also be featured in the new season. Okay, so that's what it says. I took the liberty of doing a little poking around about Drive Survive. You know, you and I haven't talked about DTS in a minute. And I thought, well, how did last year do? How did that all pan out? Well, the series last year experienced a bit of a drop since the halcyon days of COVID-19 lockdown. With season 6, get this, are you ready for some numbers?
Yes.
You guys all ready for some percentages? Because here they come. Season 6 experiencing a 30% drop in viewers and overall 15% drop in total hours viewed in season 5 and a 22% drop in total hours viewed in season 4, meaning whoever was watching watched a lot less of this series.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not in that business.
Okay.
I'm not an expert on, television shows and Nielsen ratings and all that.
Why would that stop us? It's never stopped us before.
It just seems 30% is kind of a big deal to me.
That's a huge deal.
I would think.
Yeah. I mean, I think that right, it's always what happens, and we've talked about it. We talked about it with Paul on the show a couple weeks ago, right? Like, you're always going to have that initial bump. That's great, but you have to sustain that. And are you going to, what does that look like? I think that's exactly what's happened. They just can't sustain it. It's just not that like, oh yeah, Danny's funny. Oh yeah, Max Verstappen can be a jerk face. Oh yeah, look at Lewis's outfits. Like at some point, it's just no longer that like novelty of it for people has worn off in a way that like, I don't know. I don't even think I watched much of last season. It wasn't it's just not that interesting anymore to me. There's not, and it's so played to the camera, I think is the other thing too, right? There is no authenticity, which is what you really want, is that it's like an inside view or, you're like a fly on the wall. None of it anymore feels like fly on the wall. And if you watch the race, you know that it's not a fly on the wall because they totally are like, hold on while I talk to the boom mic. Toto, fix your car, right? Like,
yeah. I have some things in the note that speak to both those very important things you brought up. We're like this, Grace. We're like this. We're, eye to eye on this thing. I think 30% is a huge hit. The reality, which I think most long-term F1 fans were saying all along, is that the curated and developed storylines, editing, and elevation of excitement in the series was a bit of a facade from the reality of Formula One and what the series actually delivers on a weekly basis. And the 2023 season's domination by Red Bull, though not the fault of its own, not the fault of Red Bull, completely betrayed the creative license that the series, that nature of creative license that the series has taken in developing their storylines, right? It will be interesting to me on a couple of things to see how much of the Horner drama they focus on, because that starts to wade into choppy waters, and how much of the Yoss situation they actually craft any narratives around. I mean, Yoss, anybody that asked him, he was ready to poo on the team.
He was like talking right to the boom mic, right?
Yeah. Yes. Christian Horner is a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the Horner-Yoss internal dynamic because, Wheatley and Newey and you had, a lot happened there.
Yeah.
And I'll be very interested about how much of that Red Bull's comfortable releasing.
Right.
It'll be interesting to see this season how much off-track storylines they develop or focus on when actually there was a lot happening on track, And then you had Checo's troubled year, right? How much
Yeah.
will they cover Checo and that whole negotiation and the re-signing and why and those kind of things will be interesting too. But having said all that, irrespective, a 30% hit in total viewers is a big deal
Yeah.
to me. Seems like. So you addressed this a minute ago, and I wrote on I think how you might. Is Drive to Survive to the point we're ready to put the Viking helmet on it, let the longboat on fire, set it on
Yes.
fire, and shove it out to the ocean?
Yes.
Or could it be saved for a continuing vehicle? So, well, here's what I'm thinking.
Uh-huh.
If it were just me, I would repurpose the series as a companion piece to F1, as a sort of video white paper per team. Now, hear me out here.
Okay.
All right. Let me know what you think here, Grace.
I will.
DTS is like Ted's Notebook, but on steroids. And people love the garage and paddock access that most will never be able to experience in their lifetime. Right. So this access humanizes the series, the drivers, the teams, the personnel of the teams, the sponsors, and the fans.
Right.
I've said for years, 17 years I've said this, that you can't take F1 to America. You have to take America to F1. And this is the perfect vehicle for doing just that. And the reason Drive to Survive blew up is because, yes, it was a bit manufactured as far as storylines go, but it's all about access and getting to look behind the curtain, something I spent decades paying a lot for an Autosport subscription from the UK weekly, just so I could read the stories from reporters who were in the paddock and behind the scenes, right? So what I say is monetize the series Drive to Survive via sponsors and teams, and keep developing it as a companion piece of a sort of video white paper per team, 10 teams, 10 episodes, right? Covering each team's season. You can include this companion piece as part of the overall broadcast rights per region. So if America is going to buy the broadcast rights, it comes with the broadcast rights and these 10 episodes that you'll show as companion pieces. Or if they wanted to, they could host it on F1 TV for a subscription, right? As a companion, more in-depth piece that fans who want to dig deeper can go in and get that access and see all of that per year for that season. Would everybody watch all 10 episodes if it was just one team and they encapsulated their entire season, and then it would go to Mercedes, and then it'd go to McLaren, and then it'd go, by the time you got down to Sauber, would anybody watch that? Well, I would, but I'm an anorak, so, that's just me. But I think that's a way you can save it, because the one thing I'd hate to think is it's just gone and you don't have any of that access. You don't see any of the behind the scenes, nothing behind the paddock. There's no other replacement for that other than Ted's Notebook.
Right. I think the thing is that, Ted's Notebook really floats on Ted's personality, right? He's
Big
quirky,
time. Big
right?
time.
There's some, and especially because it's live and he's just winging it, right? And that's very clear sometimes. And he's just making stuff up, right? And that's part of the joy of Ted's Notebook. I think one of the things that's also difficult is this very much relies on personality. So Ducati had done behind the scenes with Pecco, and it's just, I find it's not that interesting. It gives you access, but of course he knows you're there, right? So it's not really access, right? But it's also exactly if you watch the sport, what you expect is happening. After a race, Pecco's mad. Nobody's surprised by that. And he's not the kind of personality to punch walls or something like that, but he's clearly just sits there and is mad, right?
Right.
Because he's human, and that's how you deal with it. You know what I mean? It's just, I don't need to see that. It's known. But what I think would be interesting is more of the which they did more of what is it? What happens at the factory? What is more of that behind? Not so much just at the racetrack, but what does it take for? I think that Haas would be a great example. You have a total. You've moved away from Gunther Steiner. What does that actually mean to this team, right? What did they actually manage? I think there's such an interesting storyline there that you could follow, because of course just like the car, it takes a while before the Adrian Newey designed Red Bull isn't Adrian Newey anymore. That doesn't happen when he leaves. Same thing, Gunther Steiner's fingerprints are still on this team, and Komatsu was, number 2 underneath Gunther. So, I think that there's some sort of deeper analysis that would be interesting, but just this sort of surface level, we rely on personalities, is always going to be a problem, because at some day they're just not always that interesting, and by their nature are buttoned up. Even we don't get a Kimi Räikkönen every day, right? Most of them are more like on the Kimi Räikkönen, George Russell spectrum. It behooves you as a race car driver that has to get sponsorship to be closer to George Russell than to be Kimi Räikkönen, right?
Right.
One drunken stupor in a gutter hugging a dolphin these days, and you're done, right? That only works because it happened when it happened, right?
Right.
So, and I just think that that's part of the problem, is that if you're just relying on them to be like actors, but they're not actors, they're people, and the boom mic's following them around, and they even say that to Ted. Well, these guys are here, so I can't really chat too much, Ted. I think that part kind of dampens it, whereas in the beginning, nobody knew. I know. It's kind of like when they go to a new track or sprint races, right? That's exactly what happens with sprint race. The first sprint race is going to be great. The second one will be a little better. The third one, they'll have it all worked out. It'll be the same, and it won't matter, right? That's how Drive to Survive is. It was a new thing, so it was cool and interesting and exciting. And now it's, what did you say, season 6, and we're like, okay, it's another sprint race. Great. Are we at Brazil? Then I'm not really interested.
Right. So and maybe because Drive to Survive has that it operates in that certain milieu, for lack of a better word, and a misuse of the word. Maybe it doesn't translate into making companion pieces per team. I'm kind of like you. I would have loved to have seen a Williams episode that would really kind of dig into the challenges James inherited, the immediate success of the first year, but then the challenges of last year, right? And why that was so hard, and what he ran into, and not having enough wings, and not having to repurpose a chassis, and that kind of stuff I think would be fascinating to see. Maybe Drive to Survive isn't the vehicle because it is more entertainment derived, and maybe if they do away with that, maybe they could put that towards these companion pieces. But anyway, go ahead.
I didn't want to interrupt you, but I do it all the time anyway. But I think one of the things that's interesting is that Drive to Survive needs to be more like Hard Knocks, right? Where it's one football team, and you really are behind, and you really do get access, and there's a lot more that you learn, because at some point when you're a camera and you're embedded with that team for a whole season, it has to be, at some point you just have to function, and you can't just play the cameras are here, I can't say anything, Ted, because at some point you have to do business. And I think that if it was more like that, even though that comparison was kind of made in the beginning, that Drive to Survive is kind of like Hard Knocks, I think if they went more in that focus and less, because even now, is one episode really enough to really get into Haas or even Lewis Hamilton going to Ferrari? Because how many people I knew said to me, I heard about Lewis Hamilton, and I'm like, but he's going there next year. That was really lost to people that just saw the headline and knew, oh, Grace watches Formula One, I'll bring it up with Grace. I'm like, no, he's declaring in 24 where he's going into 25. And it was like, oh, that is a big deal, right? Let alone that it's Ferrari and he's at Mercedes, and if that nuance is lost, right?
Right.
On just some casual, in the same way, because there's a Drive to Survive for tennis that I'm like, I don't know anything about these people, but I'm like, well, I'm really into it now, right? Because it's about tennis that I don't watch. So it's easier because I have nothing but belief in what they're telling me in that version of Drive to Survive, and it's the same. So if you're actually watching Drive to Survive and are now watching the sport, you have that same dissonance that we've always had as people who've watched the sport and then started watching Drive to Survive, because suddenly you're like, oh, that's not really what happened at all, or I don't really think that's how that's going, or, well, it seems like it should be deeper than that, right? You sort of get past that surface level, and so then you have problems with a show like Drive to Survive, unless they do a really deep dive like Hard Knocks does.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with you on that format.
I'm with you. I like the 10 episodes, one each team. I think you could, Or just pick some great storylines that you can have at the beginning and just follow those to the end,
Yeah, I think it would be good. And you're right. It's that, and I think there was a lot of that, and from my experience, I remember working. I won't name names, but I had a vice president. We were in some XCOM meeting, and we're all on video and waiting to start the meeting, and this guy's got a piece of work, but he comes to the meeting, and it's during lockdown or second year into Drive to Survive maybe, and so we're talking, and he probably sees a car or two behind me, and he says, "Oh,
it's a couple."
He goes, "Do you like racing?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Hey, have you ever watched Formula One?"
Yeah.
And I kind of
You
lean
mean
my
this?
head over. I go, "This here behind me." That he goes, "Oh, okay." He
It's
goes,
giant.
and he's like, "Are you getting into Formula One?" Yeah. He's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Yeah, you ought to really get into it." It's he goes, "Man, I just started watching this series Drive to Survive, and I am totally into it. I am absolutely into it." And he's he's a good guy, but it was just a funny conversation and then when he figured out, I said, "Well, yeah, I've been podcasting on it for 17 years and writing about it for 17, 18 years, and he was like, "Whoa, yeah." So, I mean, he's nice to know about it. He wouldn't have known, he didn't know and just saw the picture. And so, it was a funny moment, but there was a lot of that though, where people really didn't know anything about Formula One, got hooked by Drive to Survive, and they're like totally in it. It's like you and your tennis show examples. So, and I think, like I said, I think a lot of that reason is because they got to see a lot more about F1 than what you would see in a broadcast. So, and to Drive to Survive's credit, whether it was manufactured or not, they created friction. They created villains. They created storylines and narratives that emotionally would hook you, just like the movie Senna did. But so anyway, that's my concept of how you repurpose that.
There's an interview with Lewis Hamilton, and he's talking about the Niki Lauda James Hunt movie, and he's not talking about the movie, but he's like, you watch that and you're like, it talks about James Hunt's out with the ladies and he's doing the drinking and he's like, and then Nikki would tell me these stories, and I'm like, that is not the way you were portraying that movie, my friend, right? Like, I mean, they kind of played this like Niki Lauda's the like straight man, and like James Hunt's out there being the crazy guy, and he's like, well, I was just like, Nikki, this is not what I was told you were supposed to be like, right?
It's a shitbox.
Yeah, I think that's totally the thing here.
It's so true.
Poetic license that's involved.
Yeah, it is. And in Senna, same thing. And I know I've just said on a few podcasts ago we were talking about this, but they always, in every movie about Senna, they always make Prost to be this horrible French villain, and he wasn't that way. I watched the series during that time. I read the interviews, and Alain Prost gets a bad rap whenever someone has to tell the Senna tale. They instantly have to make Prost the bad guy, and he wasn't. He's an amazing race car driver.
I think the other thing too that I think as Anorax that makes me sad is that there's like 7 other things that actually happened that you could have covered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like when you, submit a proposal or something at work and they're like, we can't do this. And you're like, okay, I was afraid you were not going to like it because of X. And they're like, well, actually, Z is the I'm like, well, we're in the clear. I don't have any problems with Z. I thought X was why you're going to shut me down, right? Like, there's like all these other reasons that would have made it an interesting storyline that you just ignored in order to make up this storyline. Why do that? There was plenty of storylines that existed that if you just worked a little harder, maybe it could have been there, because again, I think there's such interesting stuff beyond just, Gunther Steiner being Gunther Steiner, right?
Yeah.
What does that team look like now that that personality isn't there? Same thing with Ricciardo. Like, he even says that, like, what is this show going to do without me? Right.
Right.
What are you going to do without him?
Right. Well, and if you thought the Netflix news ended there. It doesn't. No. It gets even bigger than Drive to Survive. So now there's talk that Netflix may be throwing its hat in the ring to become the broadcaster of Formula One in the States. ESPN had a person named Kate Jackson who led their coverage of F1. And if you recall, the original deal was done for peanuts to rebroadcast Sky Sports content by then commercial managing director Sean Bratches.
Yeah.
Right? And who, Sean, was formerly at ESPN.
Right.
But he moved over to Liberty Media. Now, to Sean's credit, Drive Survive was his high watermark during his time at Formula One. So kudos to Sean. He did a great job. So he did that. The second deal, once that first initial contract was up for free, keep in mind that NBC was paying for Formula One. And when they came in, kicked NBC out, moved it over to ESPN and just in simulcast Sky's broadcast, right? Fair enough. Sky does a great job. The second deal when that contract was up for the years 2019 through 2022 was for $5 million. So they went from free, then ESPN paid $5 million, and then finally for the 2022 to 2025 contract, what ends this year, that deal is reportedly costing Disney, who owns ESPN, $90 million.
It's a bit different.
So Sean's desire to get F1 into America, into more American homes for free, then effectively Drive Survive comes out, then it's $5 million, and DTS explodes, and now it was $90 million payday for them. It worked impeccably well. Great job by Sean. Fantastic job. Kudos to Sean for that. But the plot thinnens. You see, Kate Jackson just left ESPN not long ago to join Netflix. And she promptly brought some live boxing, some NFL games. They just did a huge deal for WWE wrestling. Wrestling.
I don't think that's what Kate Jackson called it.
No, she didn't call it wrestling, but she should have. So we're going to bring wrestling to the streaming service, right? They've also signed to stream the 2027 and 2031 Women's World Cup.
That's good.
So sports and Netflix synonymous.
That's right.
You can count on Netflix for all your high visibility sport events. The interesting thoughts from the articles I've read suggest that if Netflix do secure the rights, it wouldn't, I don't think it would be a Sky Sports F1 coverage simulcast situation.
So they're going to do their own coverage?
That's what I'm hearing. Now,
the plot thickens, right?
No.
That's a whole nother ball of wax.
Oh, we are in uncharted territory here. This is a big deal, right? Now,
Huge big deal.
I'm not a huge fan of every single talking head Sky Sports F1 puts on the screen.
They
Trust
have
me.
like 20
I'm not.
of them.
Yeah, and I'm not a big fan of every one of them. But they do a really good job on the whole, right?
Sure.
Much better than some cobbled together American
I mean,
broadcast.
they've been doing it for how many gazillion years?
Yeah,
right?
and they're on-prem. There's a difference.
Right, and I think, I mean, that's a huge one. I mean, I remember that with, Speed Vision, right? There's definitely a difference between watching on TV monitors just like the rest of us and being there.
Yes.
They are in England, so then, therefore, it is a sport that they have. Again, did you know the Super Bowl didn't happen? Not if you lived in America, because that's all we've been talking about for the last week, right? So if you were in a country where you have that kind of where you're living under a rock, if you didn't know, because it's Formula One and it's everywhere, it's going to give you a different ethos to your broadcast than
it is. Now,
watching it.
I don't overstate or understate this next part, but if Netflix do create their own coverage team, they had better be damned careful in who they pick.
I agree.
The reason Sky F1 works is they have a pro motorsport broadcaster in coffee. They've got a former F1 driver who is wickedly smart about the series in Martin Brundle. They've got an F1 driver analyst in Ant Davidson, who is also does some work for Mercedes, who is world class, right? They got a special features and pit lane reporter in Ted.
Right.
They've got paddock coverage and FP1 coverage from Rachel, right? She does a great job. They've also got race analyst and color guide Karun, right?
Yep.
And then they have the Craig Slater guy who is more of a muckraker, but fair enough.
Yeah, Craig.
Sky is, in my humble opinion, no disrespect, but I kind of feel like Sky is starting to buckle a little bit at the knee. I'm not sure Simon, Craig, Naomi, Natalie add any different element or insight to the broadcast, but I do understand having them there because you're rotating staff, right?
Yeah, there's like 40 races a season.
Yeah,
now,
right. There's
right.
24 races, and they're
tough.
trying to rotate staff. Now, every attempt at creating a new F1 coverage crew, including F1 TV's crew, has had its challenges. And all attempts by ESPN to assemble F1 content teams have been repurposing sports broadcasters or 20-something influencers for the task, and that sank like a lost tube of chapstick in the couch cushions, right? The last American F1 broadcast team to be effective included a former driver, David Hobbs, championship-winning mechanic in Steve Matchett, right? And then you had longtime motorsport professional Lee Diffie, right? Total pro. All right. So if Netflix wants to be serious about their F1 coverage, they'll get away from bubbly 20-something TikTok influencers and repurpose talking heads from tennis, soccer, or pickleball and bring in a team that actually knows F1 in its core. A pro motorsport broadcaster, a former F1 driver, and a technical person, just like the Matchett Hobbs Diffie or Crofty Brundle Davison. And that works, right?
Right, because it's a car. You need all those aspects. Yeah.
You do. And regarding the former driver and IndyCar and NASCAR driver isn't a de facto expert of F1 driving. They're just not.
No.
I mean, I love Hinch as the next person. I love, but it's different driving IndyCar and NASCAR than F1. I love those series, but it's not the same. Consider the insight you get from Jensen Butler, JB, Ant Davidson, PDR, Paul DeResta, Martin Brundle, even Nico Rosberg versus non-F1 drivers.
Yeah.
I mean, you may not be a big Nico fan, but he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Yes, he gets on a tangent, and he's
still Nico, right?
He can be pretty blunt, but he's still a championship-winning F1 driver, and he still knows how to drive a car.
And there's different, like, I always put it this way, right? Like, at jobs, there are people that I like working with that I never want to have drinks with.
Yeah.
There are people I work with that I don't like working with, but I love having drinks with.
Right.
Nico Rosberg can fit in that. I like working with him. I don't want to have drinks with him, right?
Right.
We don't need to be friends outside the office, but you do know something and you bring something to this team, right?
Yeah, he does. Now, I can make the same comparison, though, also. I was thinking about this with IMSA coverage. Sure. So watching this year's Daytona 24, the Rolex. Now, again, I love Dale Jr.
Yeah.
I love Dale Jarrett. Love, some of the old NASCAR guys. They're fantastic. But IMSA is a different beast than NASCAR. Yeah. They don't add much insight as drivers because it's not 100% in their wheelhouse, Right. You say, well, okay, it's sports car, NASCAR, they're 10 tops, they're both blah, blah. NASCAR does road courses, IMSA. It's not the same. It just is not.
That's like saying high school football, college football, NFL. It's all the same.
It's all the same. It's all football.
It's not the same. It's not.
It's not. It is not the same. IMSA is a different beast, and especially a 24-hour race.
And they shouldn't be learning things when I'm learning things. Right?
Yes.
Like, I know that if I had a question and as long as Paul's not working, I can send him a text message and he'd go, oh, Grace, here's the answer to that. If I sent that message to Dale Jr., like I have Dale Jr.'s number, like I have Paul's number. But anyway, if I sent that text to Dale Jr., he'd go, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. Let me go text Paul, right? Like,
yeah, right.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't be having self-discovery at the same time your broadcasters are having self-discovery. They're supposed to be the expert. They're the one I'm supposed to be discovering things through, not
Right.
with.
Right.
Yeah, so I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, it's just not the same. And who, then during the 24, they had TK on, Mr. Lamont. Everything he says is absolutely insightful and on point. One of my favorite, I think it was Ollie Gavin they had on. And, long time IMSA sports car driver, Corvette. His commentary and input was absolutely brilliant. That's why Calvin Fish is so good, on that broadcast. He's just terrific. So different beast, right?
Yeah.
So who could you pick? Who could your picks be? And I was thinking, well, who would my picks be? I'm sitting here waxing poetic about what not to do, but they won't get Lee Diffie because Lee is a pro and he's an NBC guy, right? And he's got a great gig and doing the Olympics and NASCAR and motorsport.
I was gonna say there's some skeleton for him to narrate, like
right. Yeah, Lee's world class, super good guy. So anyway, you're not going to get him, but for lap by lap, I would court. Now I know this is a curveball, but hang in there with me.
All right.
I might court somebody like James Allen, who's done it before.
Yeah.
Or since for whatever reason Sky chose that hairy guy to sit in for Crofty.
Oh.
What, Alex Jakes is over here?
Yeah.
I mean, no offense, I'm sure I would find Harry a delightful guy and we'd have a great conversation and a beer. But Alex, any day.
Yeah.
Over Harry. Alex, is animated and he's excited like Crofty is, and sometimes he's over the top, but that's kind of his thing, right?
Yeah.
So maybe you look at a younger guy like Alex Jakes, right?
And it's that position.
Yes.
Right? Like, I mean, I think that is something that as much as I'm like, Crofty says things that are wrong, he literally for 2 hours has to never stop talking. And I, as someone who could probably go 2 hours and not have to take a breath, that's a big ask of somebody. He just is like 100% reacting in the moment. That's a real skill that not a lot of us have. And so I'm like, I don't always agree with Crofty, but I'm always like, well, that wasn't right. But I also thought that was, Lance Stroll instead of Fernando Alonso. It's okay. We'll sort that out, right?
Right. So, if I was, Netflix, I'd maybe make a run at James. I'd make a run because, I don't know if everything's that healthy over at Motorsport these days. I saw where Pablo was just released and Jonathan Noble's not there. And
he's at race.
So things aren't great over there. So maybe you pick up James. I'd pick up Alex maybe. And I can't imagine that Alex is very happy he didn't get the call up instead of Harry, if I'm honest. For the driver of the broadcast, I'd make a play for Martin. Why not?
Yeah.
I'd make a play for Martin, Ant, Paul DeResta for sure. Mm-hmm. Paul adds a lot of insight. He was just racing at the Daytona 24. I'd go for DC, David Coulthard. I might look at even bringing in a guy like K-Mag, right?
Yeah, I think that would be interesting.
Yeah, K-Mag's pretty candid, pretty straightforward. Sebastian Vettel, he's out driving Mario Karts for crying. He's bored.
Yeah.
Get him in there for his insight. And I got to be honest, I think one of the better guys that isn't on Sky enough is Jensen Button.
I agree. I love it when Jensen's on.
Yeah, I do too.
I think he brings such an insight because I think,
he does.
I think it's something that Paul always says, well, because Paul spent time, he's as a instructor, he has that very all right, so when you're coming to a turn, Grace, here's what you're going to think about.
Yeah,
right? There's this way he explains things that I think what you get from a Jensen Button. I think you need this here are the 12 things as you're entering a turn, especially because, we all think of driving a car you drive the turn when you get to the turn.
Yeah,
That doesn't
right.
work in racing.
No.
You actually set the turn up like 6 turns ago. And so if you've got a bad entry at turn 3, well, turn 7 isn't going to work out for you either, right? So you have to kind of understand that you're not taking it moment by moment like we do in road cars. You have to like set up a turn, and what does that look like, and how do you translate that from what a driver thinks of to how you then teach that to somebody that's a novice. And that's really the job that somebody like a Jensen Button has to do, is that like, here's what I know as a driver, and here's how I explain that to you, somebody who's never driven a car in this manner before. Right.
So I think JB is great. Oh, yeah. Look, if you absolutely had to have an American, then go out and get Logan Sargent.
Yeah.
He recently drove.
Yeah.
You know, if you want an American vibe to it. Now, for the technical person, first thing I do is call Steve Matchett.
Of course.
Because Steve is singular. Steve is often. And I know I'm biased because he's a dear friend of mine, but I would absolutely call Steve.
I think always. I think him being a mechanic as opposed to being an engineer, like it really brought some insight that I don't think Sky really has. That's always the thing. It's like
I agree.
They don't always have they don't have a mechanic's perspective, which I think is really missing in a sport that involves cars.
Yeah.
It's people, right? So you have to have somebody that has that intimate knowledge of a car, on the team as well.
I agree. You got drivers speculating on what mechanically may be going on. You have aerodynamics or engineers speculating, but the mechanics are the ones that know, Yeah. And Steve is, well, as I always say, he's a prolific author. I always say one doesn't read Steve Matchett, they reread Steve Matchett. He's fabulous. If Steve didn't want to do it, maybe pick up Ruth Buscombe.
Yeah.
Ruth is great. I like Bernie Collins.
Yeah.
Now, I've had a few people email me saying, can't understand a damn thing she's saying. It's terrible. Why would they do that?
I've never had that. I'm going to have to.
I don't have that problem at all. I understand everything she says. But then again, I'm Scottish Irish. So maybe, I don't know.
But I think the addition of both Ruth and Bernie has been, again, it's another component that's missing. The strategery component, right?
That's right.
And so I think that it's interesting because it removes the speculation, because they're able to say, okay, Ruth, you're on the pit wall right now. What would you do? And she'd go, well, here's the 10 things I'm thinking about right now in order to decide if Charles Leclerc should come in or not.
Right.
And so you don't have Martin Brundle speculating about that, or you don't have Simon speculating about that, right? Because you have somebody that recently did that job, and they're like, well, actually, here's all the string I'm working with right now, right? And then I remember there was one that they were like, oh, this must be nerve-wracking, and Ruth was just like, I love this, right?
I know.
This is your job. You love a little rain and a little accident and a little like chaos, because now I get to do my work, right? Like, it's all easy and predictable, then you don't really need me. So
and the one thing we don't want to talk about, and we hate talking about, is tires. And the one thing that probably impacts it the most is tires. And the great thing about Ruth and or Bernie is that they can do a really good job of tracking that and explaining that and how that applies to strategy, and both of them do a great job. So I think either or, pick them up.
I think that's
if I was Netflix. Now I have two more. And my last one is kind of fun. The next one is Mike Elliott. He left, longtime engineer. He knows where all the bodies are buried in Formula One and what's going on with cars and everything. I don't know how he would be on camera, but I do know who my last pick for Netflix might be from a technical side. You want an American vibe? You bring in Otmar Safnauer.
I love it. I love the idea of Otmar being on that side of the camera. I loved him in Drive to Survive. Yes. I think that would be great. And he's worked at multiple teams, right? So he has a real sense of like what the ethos at a different team would be like. But I think that's the thing. I think just like a basketball team, right? Like you can only have one center, but if you don't have a point guard, this is all going to get messy, right? Like, so you need somebody that's playing each of these roles and has a personality that fits it. And I always think too that in MotoGP, again, now this is like 15 years ago, but Ben Spies would sometimes step into the commentator booth, but he has a really flat, like James Vowles engineering kind of affect to him. So everything he was saying was like, oh, that's great, that was spot on, but it's all delivered like this because that's how Ben Spies delivers everything, right?
Right.
Which is what probably made him a great rider. He's still riding, but but not really exciting television, right?
Right.
So I think that it's a hard balance to find, and also just because you were a good rider doesn't mean you're a good personality. Like, I think David Coulthard is a very good personality because he does F1 TV, which is what I watch the broadcast of more now. But I think that even if he's like, I don't know, he just says, I don't know, right? It wasn't like that in my day. And he keeps it moving, and it provides some
he does.
color input, right? Like
he does.
But you really have to think about how again, like basketball, each of those 5 positions work together. Who's going to be the point guard, right? Like Bob Varsha was always great at that, and that was always what kind of made Steve and David Hobbs fun because they were sometimes on opposite sides as a driver and as a mechanic, right?
Lee Diffie, same thing, yeah.
Right, and so sometimes you have to have the Bob Varsha, the Lee Diffie to go, okay, so here's how we're going to bring these threads back together again, or here's how we find this balance between these 2 points of view that are often at odds with each other. And it's hard to get that to gel. And I think that unless they work together a lot, it's hard to get that kind of like that gelling.
Crofty and Martin kind of have that. You could do Alex Jakes, DC, and Otmar, or Alex Jakes, JB, and Otmar, or pick one. Ant or PDR or something on Otmar, it'd be pretty good. But
so it's kind of a shame that they don't do all the races. Again, as a human, I complain about having to just watch them at home on my couch, that there's too many races and I can't do
imagine going to all of them.
Right. I don't have to fly anywhere. I don't have to prepare notes. I don't have to do this for a living. So I appreciate that you have to break it up across staff, but there is something lost when you don't have the same people working together because
it is.
Seat time is seat time. They just have to like gel together, and you only really get that. Like people. I've even had people like, "Oh, I listen to your podcast. You and Todd. You work well together." And I'm like, "Well, we've been doing this for 17 years. You should go back and listen to podcast 5, right?" Like, it takes a while to sort of like get, what the vibe of the other person is.
It is.
When you can interject, and so I think that is hard. In the beginning until you kind of really gel that you're like, oh, I just stepped on his toes. I'm so sorry, right? Like, I didn't mean to, right? But now I know, and it won't happen again.
Yeah.
It just takes experience.
Yeah, agreed. So anyway, keep your eye. Let us know who you think you'd pick. That's who I just threw out some names. I thought that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get to Alvin's cat, what time have we got? Okay. Big news for Joe Guan Yu. So big fans of Joe Guan Yu. He's landed a role as reserve driver for Ferrari. Yay. Like golf applause for Joe. Yeah. Felt bad for Joe. Think he did a good job. And then also in the news, so the Sauber team / Audi in 2026 is going to set up shop in the UK. The Swiss-based Sauber team has been in Switzerland, Hinwell, for years. It's going to be setting up a shop in the UK ahead of Audi's launch in 2026. The team said the new base would, quote, provide the team with access to the world's largest motorsport expertise and talent pool, establish a platform to collaborate with top experts, and attract local engineering talent for the Audi F1 project, end quote. The idea here is, this is me talking, all the top motorsport engineers are in the UK, and poaching or hiring good talent doesn't require a major lifestyle change for those employees to join the team, right? It's because they're still in the UK and they can get access to it. They said they are, quote, evaluating potential locations within Motorsport Valley, including Bicester, Silverstone, and Milton Keynes. It said it aimed to have the UK Technical Center, quote, operational by summer of 2025. So that's a pretty aggressive timeline. So that's good. So I was thinking, Grace, that maybe they could just do like the Landman series. They could do that deal, with Billy Bob Thornton. They just buy a large 6-bedroom house. They all move into the house and work out of the garage. So
that's a drive to survive that I need to see, right? Like,
yes.
That would be fun.
And even though he's not involved, you ought to hire Billy Bob Thornton and just throw him in there just for the hell of it.
Right. Just to spice it up. I think that I feel like Audi's going to show up in 26 with shirts that said, I told you, Grace, I told you we'd do it, you big doubter. Right? Like, They keep making
Right.
steps, but I still refuse to believe it until that day that they show up on the start line.
Right.
I refuse to believe that Audi's really in it.
Yeah, and Ian said in a wind tunnel near your garage. You're right,
That's
Ian.
right.
But it won't be that. Audi, knowing Audi, it's going to be a proper factory with all right angles and the best interior in the business. There, I
All
said
right
it.
angles. That's right.
All right. You ready for some Alvin's cats, Grace?
I'm always ready.
I am too.
Controversy. Controversy.
Oh, yeah. Little Alvin's cats. Yes, Grace, what do you got for us?
All right. So first of all, I know that you're going to be sad about this news, but your boy, Sexy Kyle, won Hell's Kitchen.
Oh, hey, to be fair to Kyle, I do think
Yeah.
he can cook really well. I think he's got a kind of a
Yes.
flair and a boldness that he goes for the dishes that he made.
Yeah.
So good for him. I really thought Hannah would win that though.
I mean, I agree. So but I could see from the right, it's the producer's call. Nobody's going to say, oh, I want to go to this restaurant because I heard Hannah's the head chef. They're going to go because Kyle's the head chef, right?
Yeah, right.
So from a marketing perspective, yeah, you want Kyle to do it. And if they're
Yeah.
both beasts in the kitchen, that makes total sense. But I would
Yeah.
if I was Gordon Ramsay, I'd be like, hey, Hannah, I'm opening a restaurant and fill the blank.
Yeah.
And I'd like you to run it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I can't imagine she isn't getting a job there.
It's
or,
funny because I went like a day later and I looked her up
Yeah.
on social to see if there was any announcements that she's going to work
Yeah.
at this restaurant for Gordon,
Yeah,
'cause
exactly.
she was
So,
really good.
I also wonder, Hell's Kitchen. I know your producers listen, but it would be great if they did Where Are They Now?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had all these years of all these chefs. It would
Right.
be interesting to know if they stuck at the restaurant, how long they made it at the restaurant,
Yeah.
if they're somewhere else now.
Whatever happened to Brittany?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. And then it's like, because you only find out if they come back on one of the we didn't win shows.
Yeah,
right?
right.
But it would be interesting to know where they ended up. And I keep thinking that guy who I can't remember, but who won in Atlantic City, that I was like, wow, you're a great chef, but you're going to Atlantic City. I'm sorry.
Right.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I think that
Melton says a short order cook working in a night shift at a Waffle House.
Well, just watch out for
Hey,
those
here's
eggs.
a little known factoid. As an American living in the Midwest, I've never eaten at a Waffle House. I have never
guess it's
darkened
really
the door of a Waffle House.
a Southern thing, huh?
I guess, and I have no axe to grind. I have nothing against
No,
them.
I
just
mean-
never been there. Never been an occasion where I was hungry, and I don't know what the deal is.
all right.
I
I'm
want to
also
go
gonna-
to one, but
Well, if you ever find yourself back in the D.C. area, we will go to a Waffle House.
All right.
Although that's really perhaps not where I take you for brunch, but because we're not,
well, we can't go
20-year-olds.
to Mozart anymore.
No, that's true. But we're not college students.
Is
right?
there any
there's-
decent replacement for Cafe Mozart?
No, I don't think you can. I mean,
There was a place in D.C. that every time I went to D.C., Grace and
Yeah.
I would go have dinner at, and it was Cafe Mozart. It was pretty close to the White House, wasn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, and we would go and we'd eat there, and you walk through this German grocery
Deli.
store,
Yeah,
deli,
yeah.
and
yeah.
then went into the back of the restaurants, and we have Spätzle, and it was so good. Yeah, anyway.
Yeah. And it closed during the pandemic. So,
Yeah.
because the owner was always there, and he was like, "This is it, I'm done." So
Yeah.
a lot of restaurants didn't make it through the pandemic, but
Yeah.
I think that I don't know. Waffle House is a nostalgia. It's diner food. It's not like if you were coming all the way from St. Louis to visit me in D.C. I'm not taking you to Waffle House.
I know.
Unless it's 2 a.m. and we
Yeah.
have too much to drink, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't. So I love a Waffle House, but it's the nostalgia of the 20-year-old.
Right.
I drank too much and I need some breakfast.
See, here in the Midwest, we have this concept about Denny's. They always say that people don't
Denny's,
go to
yes.
Denny's, you end up at Denny's.
Exactly, and that's how I feel about Waffle House.
Right.
And I don't find that shade, right? Because I also had Denny's when I
Right,
went to college,
right,
and it was the same
right.
idea, right?
Yeah, going in there for my Slim Slam.
Yeah, because you were
Yeah.
just like, I have this much money, change, and
Everything else is closed.
yeah, and I drank too much, and I'm really
And we're all
starving.
quasi-drunk.
Right. So what else are you going to do? And
Right.
I think that's where Waffle House sits. I don't think it's a destination.
It's
but
where you
there
end
is
up.
a nostalgia too. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
All right. So there you go. What else? Is that it?
Of course that's
Oh,
not it.
okay.
Come on, man. How long have we been doing this show together? You know I have more to talk about
17
always.
years.
All right, yeah, right. So I did want to put this out there that there was an episode. They had Nigel. It was a YouTube video, right? They had Nigel Mansell driving a sim, and he was really good. And so it was like Flip shows it to me, and he's like, "Look, Nigel Mansell, really good at the sim." And then he's like, "So I would be a good race car driver." Because it's sort of that transient, like if the Steelers beat the Ravens and the Ravens beat the Chiefs, therefore the Steelers beat the Chiefs. Right?
Yeah.
There's some triangulation there. It was the same thing, like if I can do sim and Nigel Mansell can do sim and he's a race car driver, I also could be a race car driver. I'm like, I don't think that's how it works. But I love that you made that triangulation between like if Nigel can do it,
Good
so
correlation.
I could be a race car driver. Absolutely. Absolutely. I believe in you, Flip. You could do it. I did want to touch briefly because we are moving into the MotoGP season. And I don't know if you've been following.
Jorge Martin.
Not so good. So, yeah, he had a huge somersault. I had to look because I couldn't remember if he broke bones in his right hand and his left foot.
Not good.
And no, he won't be at the rest of testing preseason. He may not make the first race in Thailand at the end of this month. But yeah, not great. Not
good start to 2025.
Not what Aprilia was looking for. Like we got the number one, and he's not going to be the first race. Yeah,
which brings up the question: does anybody have anything for Marc Marquez?
Yeah, well, I mean that's going to be great. So then also they did a team launch just like Formula One is doing, but they did it in Thailand, which is where the first race is going to be. And so Flip and I were like, well, let's watch it. We'll watch some of it. We'll watch some of the Formula One run too. It was like 2.5 hours long. I did not make it the whole way through. I made it through Honda and KTM, which were the first set of bikes. I then saw on social... I then later saw clips on social media of when they finally get to main Ducati. It's dark out. Like this started in the daylight. It's dark out. And we're talking to Marc Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia. I'm like, too long. Like, so everybody's been talking about Formula One, how it's like each team gets 10 minutes. Well, this needed to be tightened up. This took way too long. And
By the time you get to Ducati, you and Flip are like,
Well, Lottie frickin' God!
and the poor announcers, right? They're doing the best they can. They're doing their best crofty, right? Like they're set up to fail, and they're doing the best they can to make this an enjoyable show for everybody. But I did see, so Joan Mir, he won the World Riders Championship in 2020, and he's been with Honda, and it's been terrible for him. He crashes every race. It's just been miserable for him. His bike didn't start. So they had him at the hotel on street legal bikes. So they have to take the bike. They go kind of like out on the street around the circuit into the place where the little auditorium area where they're going to do the announcements and the whole, driver interviews and stuff. He goes to start his bike. It won't start. He has to ride on the back of Luca Marini's bike. It was just like, can this man, it's the opposite of does anybody have something for Marc Marquez? Can Joan Mir just get a freaking break in this sport?
And it's all this big emotion.
I am done. I'm done, man.
Yeah,
if I was Joan Mir, I'd be like,
done.
This season isn't going to get better than this. So
no,
I feel like it was just a lot, and hopefully they get it together. But
Ian said, yes,
that's right.
That's what it is.
He is not having it. So I hope that it doesn't turn out that way, but I'm still getting used to the different Honda livery, which is totally weird, and that the KTMs are all the same, and I've already confused them, and I don't like that.
Yeah.
It's too hard.
Not good.
Not good. So MotoGP, end of the month.
There you go.
Ready.
MotoGP. You ready for some no shit headlines?
I'm always ready for no shit headlines.
Are you?
It's a shit box.
Okay.
Highlight of the show.
Here we go. Number one. On the bubble, Moët and Chandon returns as F1 champagne provider.
On the bubble.
On the bubble.
Oh,
How quaint.
all right. Cool. I wonder what happened to Ferrari. Did they go out of the
No,
the
well,
bubbly public
LVHFMHILVXX, whatever the, Louis Vuitton premium brand group house, design house, is now the title sponsor. That's why Tag Heuer, the official timepiece of the FIA. Yeah. That's why they are coming back, and Rolex is being kicked to the curb.
Oh. You heard it here first, kids.
If I had a lot of money, I wouldn't buy a Rolex. That's just me.
All right. That's
I'm an Omega man.
Yeah.
Maybe a Zenith, but maybe a Breitling. Depends. Let's see. Other headlines. Aston Martin gambles on low-key lineup for big hypercar debut. And I'm sorry, the race, but I take this one a little personal. That was a bit of a shin kick to my friend Paul Charsley and the Heart of Racing, or Thor. It was a weird article about how, oh my gosh, Aston Martin hypercar coming back, and these are the drivers. It's like, well, yes, and they're really good drivers, and the program may not have seen the light of day if it wasn't for Heart of Racing and their investments. And it was, I don't know. I was offended. Paul was like, nah. But I was offended on his behalf.
That's also very Paul.
It is. He's whatever. Yeah. We've won a championship, whatever. Let's see. Next up, Lewis Hamilton won't last at Ferrari as Bernie Ecclestone raises Charles Leclerc theory.
Who's interviewing Bernie Ecclestone, first of all?
They're still interviewing Bernie Ecclestone.
My goodness.
Yeah.
What is he?
I don't know. I read the article and I thought,
so what's his theory?
Kind of point. He thinks Piero Ferrari is the one that got Lewis in there, and he kind of felt like, he said, I hope they don't end up paying him an absolute fortune, and then in a year wishing they hadn't paid him an absolute fortune. Can't get rid of him. But he, like me, thought I would have never have paid Lewis that kind of money to come to the team, and I wouldn't if I was Total Wolff, and I wouldn't if I was Ferrari. No way. Not at this age. And in that capacity. And I don't know that I'd done a multi-year, but but like we talked about a couple podcasts ago, just marketing alone, huge, right? So, I get it why they did it. I think Bernie's not as convinced. He thinks he didn't think, he just hopes they don't actually end up ruining their decision. His point is Charles Leclerc's there. Charles speaks their language. Charles knows the whole system, and they're still going to be behind Charles. Period. And
but
it's
Lewis
always going to be difficult.
That,
yeah, Lewis knows that. He's a big boy.
It's not like Lewis was like, oh,
yeah.
You mean Charles is your number one? Really? I didn't know.
And Lewis knew he was going to Mercedes with Nico. Nico's German, Mercedes team. He's been there with Schumacher. Lewis knew that. He's a big boy.
Yeah.
He'll handle it. Whether he'll have root success, I have no idea, but we'll see. Next headline, F1 champion released rock album that sold 800 copies and was deleted from the internet.
Is it JV?
It is JV.
Oh,
Jacques Villeneuve. Yes, woo! You're absolutely. I mean, look at it this way, folks. He only sold 800 more copies than I did, and I didn't even release an album.
He deleted it?
It's amazing. No, the internet deleted it. It was deleted from the internet. JV.
How bad? How bad does something have to
I don't
the
know.
internet to delete you?
Yeah, he got deleted by the internet. Sorry for the dog. That's going to be the soundtrack of this podcast. But yes.
Well, it's all right. We'll fix it in post.
We'll fix it in post, man.
I think that is the real skill, JV, that it was so bad, the internet deleted you. The Wayback Machine said, no, we're good, thanks.
We have no record of JV ever being a musician or releasing an album. That's bad. Let's see. Lewis Hamilton promised music collaboration with Drake, but fans were left disappointed. You think? Would now not be the time to avoid doing anything with Drake if you were Lewis? Fans were upset that he didn't do anything with Drake. Can you blame him for not doing anything with Drake?
So there's this event. It's called the Super Bowl. Was anybody watching? I mean,
Lewis was there. He was there.
Drake was not.
Drake was not, as halftime evidenced.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, that's. Wow.
Yeah. Mm.
You just got called a pedophile during the Super Bowl. I don't think it's going to be great for you.
Was the song in A minor?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, Lewis, good call on pumping the brakes on your Drake collaboration there.
Drake who? I've never.
Yeah.
Aubrey, I don't know this number. I'm going through a tunnel. Sorry.
I bet Lewis is hoping he doesn't show up on anybody's list.
Yeah, really.
I hope he didn't stay in the pool house at Diddy's house.
Stay away from the baby oil.
Yeah. Let's see. Next headline, last headline. F1 teams won't launch real 2025 cars at O2 event fans are paying thousands for.
So
I don't know. We talked about this before. Is this a big deal or not? You know, as you pointed out, it's not a car launch, it's a livery launch.
it has been. It's been that way for years.
And it's
When was
been
the
that
last
way
time
for
they
years.
launched their cars,
I know.
right? Like,
when was the last year the car they actually launched on the car launch day was the car they put on the grid and raced on the first Grand Prix?
I mean, especially they haven't done any testing yet. It's not going to be the case, right? And you never want to tip your hand to the other, because of course they're watching, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not. It's a livery launch. Who are we kidding?
Yeah, they're not going to show up. Look at our quadruple blown diffuser that we flouted the rules to build.
Look at
Not going to do it.
Thing. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Yeah, look at my cockpit that flexes and
Yeah, they're not.
No, they're not going to do it. It's a livery launch. It has been for years. So don't be upset. I mean, I understand you're trying to make it sound like fans are paying thousands to see the real cars, and they're not. It was like, well, but they wouldn't be.
On top of the fact, you're so, who would notice?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I have to watch stuff on F1 TV because I don't, and it's only because now they have to declare it, right? So every race they have to say, this is what I changed since the last race. Otherwise, I'm like, I don't know, were there 3 squiggly bits or 4 squiggly bits last week?
Yeah.
I don't know, right? Like, so I think that there's some amount of like, unless the car, there are years where you go, I'm sure in 26, there'll be drastic differences that I, a novice with my eyeballs and no engineering degree, can be like, that car is different from last year's car. But the difference between the 24 and the 25 car, it's going to be 2 squiggly bits instead of 3 squiggly bits. I don't know.
Right. And it's kind of, I don't know. It's Ian said, tell me you're new to F1 without telling me you're new to F1. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's always going to be that way. That's why I went dancing. I want that launch to be full Ferrari anniversary dancers. I want it to be Grassini dancers last year. I want some entertainment because it's not the livery.
That's right.
You know,
give us some entertainment. Fly Lewis over the crowd like at the opera. All right.
Have some tire sitting. Have some pulling your nation's flag off your car.
Definitely tire sitting.
And we'll love it. That's what we want.
All right. Well, that does it for this podcast. It's what we think about the news. You let us know what you think about the news. You can do that by going to theparkforme.com. Share your opinion. As always, do it with decorum and civility. If you like the podcast, go to your favorite podcast player, copy the link, send it to all your friends, send it to people you don't know, share it. Also, give us a good review. Give us some love over there. And if you like the actual YouTube channel, hit the like and the bell icon and the share icon and the embed icon and all that stuff and do whatever it is you do on YouTube. That would be great. And then next week, we're going to come back. We're going to do all this all over again. We're going to talk about the news. But until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camber, saying so long, Grace.
See you next week.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.